Hello, hello, hello. It's TeMeka of Love Inspire Teach E, and we are live today with a guest host, someone who's familiar to you if you've watched the podcast before. So if you've seen it before, thank you so much. If you like watching our replays and that's how you're watching this, I want to say thank you so much. For those of you that are new to the LITE Firestarters podcast, it is a development out of the Love Inspire Teach e-blog, and we added the podcast just to really engage in interesting topics, hence the Firestarters name. We touch on topics like health and wellness, relationships, a little bit on spirituality, and tonight we're touching on finances. Honestly, all of those are related, but I just wanted us to have an organic space to be able to have these kind of conversations, learn from one another, and also for it to be a safe space. And so I'm happy to announce that we have Drew back. And for those of you that don't know, my intro for Drew is he's a longtime friend. He's actually in the healthcare space, but this is something that's more of a special interest topic. And part of the reason for that is, or at least for me, wanting him to touch on this is one, it was a personal interest to me as well. And two, I just feel like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin is one of those areas that people are hesitant about. And when Drew and I were doing our prep for tonight, we actually did touch on that. So with that in mind, I think it's really relevant and still okay to hear from someone who's dedicated a significant amount of time. If you watched the previous podcast about a month ago, when we first did a cryptocurrency introduction, specifically Bitcoin introduction, Drew was the co-host then, and he's really our expert. And we realized it's just a very in-depth topic that is really hard to cover all in the short amount, and an hour. So that's not a short amount of time, but when you're talking about your finances, how often do you really dedicate only an hour to them? The only time you're only giving an hour to like the building of it is probably because you're meeting with a financial advisor that only gave you that much time. But I mean, doing your taxes takes well over an hour. So this is something that we agreed through December. We were going to do a series of Bitcoin podcasts focused solely on that, with the hopes that during this holiday season, during this shopping season, may inspire you to take your finances to the next level, open up your mind to the possibility that, you know, this is something that's here to stay. So totally went back into the topic and not into Drew. So I've known Drew for a long time. Him and I went to high school together. We have a great history. He works in healthcare, but when we talk about health and wellness and different things we've done, the pandemic, as he shared last time, is what gave him the opportunity to really dig deep into this. He's been studying it for a few years. He is a dad. He is a professional. So as far as like what motivating factors does he have to have his finances in order? We all have that basic of, yeah, we got to take care of ourselves. But like me, he's a parent. Like me, you know, we're in these spaces where they try to tell us we should be savvy. So I'm going to say that it's definitely relevant for him to talk about this. So I'm going to add him so that we can get his take on one, his intro. Let us know what I missed that he wants us to that he wants us to know that I didn't touch on. And then we were going to do a little overview of what we touched on last time. Okay, so welcome, Drew.
Hello. Thank you.
It's me, but you're there. It's all on you now.
No, I appreciate it. I think you did a great job. And yes, I've been working in healthcare for quite some time. And, you know, the neat thing about healthcare is that you have to see a lot of the changes take place as far as technology in healthcare. When I first started, the field looked very different. And so then they, made it required where every healthcare facility required electronic medical records. And so everything is just changing so rapidly, so fast. And it's really a privilege to be in this position to see so many changes come about. And now we're in a position where we're seeing more changes come about. The financial industry is changing, and our currency is changing. And so as scary as things are at the moment, it's also a very exciting time because, these situations don't come about every day. And so we have the privilege of being in a very unique time where we're getting to see our currency change over. And so they'll write about this in history books for years to come. And it's exciting that we have the technology to record this information because people can go back and relive these moments. They can be in the room with us during this interview, and they can see where we were at this time and, where things go from here. So just very excited about everything that's happening. Again, I know change is scary. There's a lot of changes coming about, a lot of uncertainty, but if you can find a way to kind of see through the smoke and mirrors, you can identify some good opportunities. And I think Bitcoin is one of the best opportunities that is going to come about.
Smoke and mirrors? What smoke and mirrors are you talking about?
Well, there's plenty, right? There's plenty. And so, God, where do I start?
Well, first we did say, yay for me doing a good intro. He just dove right in. And I think that speaks to how into this topic, how focused Drew is. So I want you to take that into consideration as we get into this deeper. But let's just talk about when we first had the podcast and you introed Bitcoin to everyone, and you outlined it from the frame point of what is money, the problem with money, and what's the solution to the problem for money. So you said you'd give us a brief recap so we could go into your other highlight points. I'm gonna let him break it down for you. Oh no, actually, let's go ahead and say what Drew's agenda is. He wants to talk about, he already touched on it a little bit, about technology, so the significance of it as it relates to the topic at hand. He's going to also talk about how companies have approached technology, and he's going to let you know why Bitcoin is relevant. So that's the broad overview, but before we even get into that, he's going to let us know what it is, or how it relates to money and why this conversation is relevant based on our last podcast. And then he's going to take us deeper into the topic on a whole, so that, I teased him about the smoke and mirrors, but what we're really trying to get at is when you go through changes, it's uncomfortable, right? And this topic, when I said it was of special interest to me, I think it's funny. I am an econ major from Duke, and people are always like, "Oh, you went to Duke," and I'm like, I forget stuff too. That was a long, long time ago. Yes, I'm interested in the economy, but I've been slacking on cryptocurrency. So when Drew said he knew and had gotten really into it and he was really excited about it, I was like, well, teach me. And that's where smoke and mirrors comes in. And my hesitation had to do with some bad experiences related to Bitcoin. It had to do with knowing I needed to learn more, and having a resource available that took that time to learn more was really important to me. So with that being said, now that you know where he's going to take us, let's go back to what we already talked about in a more concise form, because we want to dig deep and get you guys really excited about Bitcoin. So go ahead and give us the synopsis of, what is money, the problem with money, and what the solution is that is readily available now.
Yep. The easiest place to start is the solution is Bitcoin. And so what is money is, something we touched on in the previous podcast, but just a recap, money has 5 properties or a store of value. And those 5 properties are, it needs to be recognizable. And that's what Bitcoin is currently going through, mass adoption. More people are learning about what Bitcoin is every day. So checkbox number 1 on, money is recognizable or needs to be recognizable as one of the properties. It has to be divisible. You need to be able to divide it and regroup it to buy small things such as a cup of coffee, or large things such as a home. And so the other quality, it has to be durable. It has to last over a period of time. You can't have something that'll go bad and call that your currency, because it wouldn't be worth anything in a short amount of time. So, and that's a big reason why gold has been the best store of value for the last 5,000 years, is gold will last much longer than our human lifespan. And the other property of money is that it has to be scarce. And so that's where Bitcoin really shines, because it has a fixed cap. And so regardless of the demand, Bitcoin can go to $10 million a coin. No more will ever be produced. And that's the first time that's ever happened in human history. Anytime there's been a demand of something, high demand, we've always figured out a way to produce more. And then the biggest advantage I think that Bitcoin has over a lot of other things is its portability. Money needs to be able to move through time and space. And so, it's very hard to move things like gold, or, our dollar currency is a little easier to move, but even that has its flaws. But when something is digital, that moves at the speed of light. It moves faster than anything physical. And so those 5 properties are important to understand, what is money. And then the other thing to understand what money is basically, it's just the exchange of human time, right? We do something for, we give our physical time in exchange for, a medium of exchange to pay for other people's physical time. And so that medium of exchange is money. And money has changed forms throughout the years. They used, gold and silver coins, the Romans, but that currency was debased because people eventually started to shave down the coins and make them smaller and smaller, and so they became worth less and less. And another interesting thing to know about coins is, if you ever look on a quarter, you'll see the ridges around it. And the reason you see the ridges around like a quarter is because when people used to clip money, it was hard to tell if the currency had been manipulated. So they put ridges around the quarters to be able to tell easier if the currency had been manipulated. So that's just an interesting fact about money. And so they used to use glass beads, seashells. The interesting thing about glass beads is that's how Africa became impoverished. Is the Europeans, they realized that the Africans were using glass beads of a medium of exchange, and they realized that they can mass produce glass beads in Europe. And so they created more of that store of value and brought it to Africa and impoverished, the country that way. And so money has always changed forms, and Bitcoin is just the latest form of currency to come about. And so it's a new technology. Technology always advances, and that's one of the things I really wanted to jump into tonight and talk about, just a brief history of how technology has allowed our country to become a world superpower, and how those technological advances have made things better. And Bitcoin is just one of many forms of technology that has made society better. And so, like, if you go down kind of like the history timeline and how this country was built up, you had Cornelius Vanderbilt. If people don't know about him, he's the guy that created the railroad system. And so that's important because you were able to move products and services from one point to another at a rapid pace. And so that increased productivity. And then you had J.D. Rockefeller come about, and he gave us Standard Oil. And so that made life a lot better for many reasons. And I don't think, and I didn't realize it until, I started really looking into petroleum and all the benefits or uses of petroleum. And that's why we have refineries. When petroleum is heated at different degrees, at different temperatures, it makes different products. And so that's why oil is so valuable as a commodity, because at one temperature, it gives you, fuel for a cigarette lighter. At another temperature, it gives you fuel for a car. At a different temperature, it gives you fuel for an airplane. And so petroleum is very vital, very vital piece of technology that it allowed us to advance. After Rockefeller came about, you had Andrew Carnegie, who developed steel. And so steel was a good, technological invention, because it allowed us to build America up, right? Before that, you only had, buildings that were as high as like 5 stories, but steel gave us the opportunity to build skyscrapers. And that was a big draw to the United States, is, we had skyscrapers in Chicago and New York. And so steel was another, technological breakthrough. And then we know what developed from steel. We got aluminum, right? Without steel, we wouldn't have aluminum. And without aluminum, we wouldn't be able to fly airplanes. The Wright brothers gave us, airplanes, but without aluminum, we wouldn't be able to fly commercial, planes and things like that. And then you had J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan gave us the banking system. Henry Ford gave us automobiles. And the reason I'm covering, just kind of giving a general overview of technology is scary when it first comes about. Can you imagine, like, if we were the first people to develop the first automobile, and what that would have been like? At the time, everybody was using horse and buggy, but we came along with this idea that, hey, we have this automobile that we want you guys to try. And there's no gas station, there's no paved roads, but, it's a new technology that, and people would have looked at us and thought we were crazy at the time. Like, how are you going to get around in this new technology? You don't have gas stations, you don't have paved roads, so you have to, build out the infrastructure. And so, today's time, everybody's using, automobiles, and Elon Musk is going to take that, to the next level when you have self-driving cars. So technology always changes over time. And so, fast forward to some of the more modern technology. You had Steve Jobs, who gave us, Apple and the iPhone. You have just Jeff Bezos, who gave us Amazon. And so, technology is always making things better. And so where we are now is we've left the industrial age, and that was with, the formation of steel, the, formation of the automobile. We're leaving that factory industrial age, and we're transitioning into, the technology and information age. And when you go through a shift like that, it can be scary. And so we can take Amazon, for example. Let's say you and I, we owned, I think a lot of people are familiar with Sears, the retail store. So at the time, Sears didn't see.
Come on now, we all know about Sears. If you're old enough, you remember Goldblatt's, and it's holiday season. Come on,
exactly.
We love shopping. Let's just add some humor and reality to this. Come on,
right. And so,
let's keep it real.
if we owned a retail store such as Sears, right? We were the CEOs.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, we couldn't see the threat of an Amazon coming, right? Because think about how like a retail store such as Sears works, right? The CEO or the managers, they decide what products go on to the floor, right? They have to select which products go onto the floor. They have to kind of guess which products the customers want to buy. And so that was everyone's kind of process for a long time. But then you have a company like Amazon that comes, and they give you access not just to a limited amount of merchandise, they give you access to everything in the store. And it's hard to compete with that, right? When you go from a select few options to a lot of options and a lot of variety. And Amazon, they didn't create more retail stores; they just made retail digital. And Amazon was just a new technology, and I think that any successful company is a technology company at its foundation, and you can go across many industries, and you start to see a pattern that, yeah, if that Henry Ford, he wasn't the first, or the only person to create the automobile. It's just he had a better technology than the other automobile makers at the time, and that's why he was successful. And so anytime you have a technology in a certain field, and it's a better technology than your competitors, you're going to emerge as the better company. So, for example, a lot of people don't think about Hershey's. They think about it as a candy store, but Hershey's is really a technology company at its foundation. If I own 10 candy stores and you own the Hershey factory, you have a better technology than I do. Whereas I can make maybe 100 candy bars a week with my, workers by hand, but you can make 100,000 candy bars, an hour with the Hershey, machine. And so you have the better technology.
So now, I just have to interject for those of y'all with kids, and he just made this really great point about how you can make your kids take candy into account as they plan for their lives, and make sure to remind them that when it comes to candy, it is a form of technology. Okay,
that's right.
Let's tie it all together. Let's make it intriguing, not just for us as adults, but Drew also sent me some really cool YouTube videos that he wanted me to share with my kids. So I just wanted to help bridge those gaps and take those opportunities to throw those in there, because he's not going to think about it. You can see how laser focused he is and like how in depth he's getting, but I got to remind y'all the fun points too.
Yeah,
so I have to throw you off track and add that in.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. So every company is a technology company at its foundation, and we look at the recent breakthroughs in technology, and when I say we're transitioning into this digital age and this information and technology age, just look at some of the companies that have emerged recently. You have a company like Uber. Uber is the largest taxi cab provider, not because they own the most cabs, it's because they use technology to create or to make everyday cars into taxi cabs. You have Airbnb. There's the largest hospitality provider, not because they own the most hotels, it's because they use technology to make everyday homes and apartments into hospitality rooms and accommodations. And it's all technology. Look at Facebook, how they dematerialize, relationships, and Google, how they, dematerialize information. And just to go a little further with Google, I don't know if we discussed it the last time, but Google Maps is a perfect example of how technology is really kind of just advanced. Before there were paper maps that you used to have to rely on, and those paper maps were very limited to the information they could provide to you. But now that technology has advanced and we have Google Maps, now you have a map that will talk to you and a map that will tell you where to go. And if you need glasses like me, the map, you can zoom in and zoom out and it can get bigger and smaller. You can't do that with a paper map. And now the map will tell you the best restaurants on your route to your destination. And there's so many different things that, a digital map will do that a analog map can't do for you. And so the reason I'm just trying to highlight all these benefits to upgrades in technology is because Bitcoin is an upgrade to technology as well. it's an upgrade to our financial system. And just to
He
kind of,
says it's an upgrade, but he gave me the key question that was really intriguing to me. And the key question is, it can be an upgrade all day. All kinds of stuff gets upgraded. Like he talked about cars, he talked about GPS. They've made improvements there. But what I think people need to understand about why you've gotten so excited about this is, has Bitcoin been duplicated before? I feel like that's the question at hand.
Yeah. So that's
relevant.
So it's been attempted many times over, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to attempt to try to duplicate something that's already scratched $1 trillion market cap, right?
I want $1 trillion. Every time he reminds me of that, I'm like, why has it taken
exactly?
so long?
So it's been tried many times.
Why? But okay, let's dig into that a little bit though. You said it has $1 trillion market cap. It's been attempted to be duplicated before, and my thought is, I want some of that. But hopefully what you're going to get into as well, why don't people realize that, or why isn't that something that inspires more people to get to the point where you're at? What do you think it is about that, the technology, since you've framed it as technology, this form of money that prevents people from hearing $1 trillion and being like, oh, I got to jump on that?
So a couple things. Let's talk about the first thing, which is many people have tried to duplicate Bitcoin.
So they have. So that
right.
basically says I'm wrong. People do have an interest in it.
They do. It's been tried over 10,000 times to try to duplicate Bitcoin.
Wow.
But failed because Bitcoin is a commodity. And everything else, all the other cryptocurrencies so far. Gary Gensler is the chair of the SEC, and we can dive into the SEC in a minute. But the SEC is the Securities Exchange Commission. And so Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency that's been classified as a commodity, where everything else has been classified as a security. And so the difference between the two is commodities have no CEO, right? They have no. So examples of commodities are like, oranges and wheat and pork bellies and oil and a lot of things that we consider assets. And so the easiest way to think about a commodity is a asset with no CEO, right? A security is a asset.
Okay, you're taking notes like I am. Okay.
Yeah. A security is an asset with a CEO, and that's important because what can a CEO do when they control an asset? They can manipulate it, right? And so just to cover what the SEC is, because I don't want to lose the audience, but so the SEC is the Securities Exchange Commission. And the first chair of the SEC happened to be JFK Sr., right? And so when the SEC was formed, the pitch line to the public was, we're creating this Securities Exchange Commission to protect the retail investor. So that's what we are, right? Everyday people that invest into the stock market and things like that, we're considered retail investors. And so the SEC made some rules where in order to invest in certain things, you had to be a certified investor, right? And so the criteria for a certified investor is you either have to have $1 million in assets, or you have to have consecutive income. I believe it's $300,000 a year for a couple years. And so those two things eliminate like 99% of the population, right? Most people don't have $1 million in assets. Most people don't make $300,000 a year. And so why.
And that goes back to my question, though, why everyone's not necessarily jumping on it as well, right?
And so I'll cover that in a minute.
Oh no, I'm getting him off track too much because the exciting part is when he's gonna highlight Bitcoin as a new tech that trumps previous ones. So let me not get him too in the weeds, but
No, that's
we're
all
gonna
right.
get out of this SEC stuff in a moment.
So with the SEC, the reason that's important is because, you know, when Amazon, before they went public, you and I wouldn't have had the opportunity to invest in the Amazon when their shares were pennies on a dollar, because we're not considered certified investors by the SEC, right? If you don't have $1 million in assets and don't have, consecutive income of, that amount, you get disqualified. And then the minimum amount to invest as a certified investor is like 70,000. So if you want to get involved in a project, you have to at least be able to put up, I think it's 70,000, maybe it's 40, I can't remember. But anyway,
can we just say barriers to entry though? Like that
yes.
is why I just have to take this opportunity to highlight why Bitcoin should be exciting to you. Because when you hear all these numbers, obviously, if we're talking to you about it as lay people, that is not the case. If you watch the previous podcast, then you would know one of Drew's final recommendations was just invest a little bit per week, whether that means you have a weekly budget of $5. It could be even a monthly budget of $5. He didn't really say you had to, but getting started was key. But when we're talking about barriers to entry and whether or not you have it, and this doesn't exist right now, let me just go ahead and highlight that as we're 30 minutes in. Like, I'll throw in a quick little commercial break. I want y'all to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. But one of the reasons to share this podcast, to comment on it, thank you if you're watching the replay, is because this is an opportunity that can change and will change over time. So as he talks about the SEC, and you're like, oh, I don't want to hear about these people that I know nothing about. I don't really care. I hate government. I hate structure. I hate all this. The reason why it's relevant is because as you hear him say $70,000, $1 trillion, or all these dollar amounts, your ears kind of glaze over if you don't have that. And we're trying to get you to understand this is an opportunity that's available right now because the SEC is coming, more or less, right, Drew?
Right, exactly. So regulation is coming, which is a good thing. But so, if we're not considered certified investors, we can't invest in these startups when the companies are pennies on a dollar. Bitcoin, this is the first time in history where the retail investor gets to front run Wall Street, meaning we get to invest in Bitcoin when it's a nickel, right? We get to invest in Bitcoin when it's, pennies on a dollar. That's never happened. And so,
but let's talk about it like this. Like, you've kind of been touching on commodities versus securities. There's such a thing as penny stocks. Why you say that, but in my head, the first thing that came to mind was like, well, why don't you just call Bitcoin a penny stock? What differentiates it? What makes this technology, what makes this form of money better than penny stock, and not just putting it in that category? Because you can invest in a penny stock, and the risk with a penny stock, for those of you that may or may not know, is that it could blow up or it could not blow up, but you came in entry level. So when Drew says, hey, we can do this with Bitcoin, some of us may be like, well, I'm just going to get penny stocks. So they've been around. It's the same risk. Why is Bitcoin not the same risk as a penny stock?
Because Bitcoin is an asset with no CEO.
Okay, which he talked about extensively and touched on.
Yeah, okay. It's a commodity. So there's no CEO. There's no head of the table that can manipulate Bitcoin. Whereas stocks, you can have a CEO that makes the wrong public statement, does something unethical. There's a lot of different ways where CEO can, they can put more stock into circulation and dilute the value of your stock. So there's a lot of things a CEO can do to a security that is just not, they're not able to do with a commodity, because a commodity has no CEO. And that's a great thing for.
And Bitcoin has no CEO, and what he's been talking about is the SEC can't currently regulate it.
Correct. They've already classified it as a commodity. Yep.
Well,
yep.
So let me correct myself. They're in the beginning stages of putting their hands on it to regulate it, but they've given it this better status as a commodity rather than security. So let me correct myself and get my technology right.
That's all right.
Sorry, my mind's on technology.
That's probably the most important takeaway, is to understand that Bitcoin is a commodity, whereas every other cryptocurrency right now is probably going to be classified as a security because they all have CEOs and issuers. So
like which ones? I wasn't aware of that. Like, I thought Bitcoin and cryptocurrency were the same thing. So correct my ignorance. I thought that's what we talked about last time too.
So Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, but it's the only one that's a commodity.
Okay.
Like Ethereum, Ethereum is a security. So far it's considered a security. Ethereum and anything else, and so. Ethereum has a CEO. Ethereum has already changed the blockchain history, and so Ethereum, just with any other cryptocurrency, is right now, it classifies as a security. In order for something to be a commodity, it would have to go through the same process as Bitcoin. You would have to have a creator that kind of gives a gift to the world, right? And that's what Satoshi Nakamoto did. Is he or they or whomever that individual or team of individuals is, they created a commodity and took no credit for it financially, and so that's why it's been tried 10,000 times by other people, but everybody wants credit for it. Nobody's willing to give a gift to the world of a new financial system and not want anything in return. So,
now let's face it, most people are gonna think a gift from the world is crazy. Like who does that? So I just want to also say, don't dwell on that or focus in on that too much. Like I would hope you're in awe of it and appreciative of it, but don't use that as one of your ways to like look at it as a conspiracy theory. Because Drew, did we even touch on it? How long has Bitcoin been around?
So it came about in 2009, and so it's been around for what, 13 years now. And so
I just want to, the reason why I asked him that though is because to some people that may not be that long, but when you think about how much he's talked about technology and how it has changed and evolved over time, we also have to factor in that the time it's taking for technology to evolve is shortening. Like it's happening much quicker.
Right.
And for Bitcoin to do it in 13 years, that should be enough time for us to say, hey, it's sticking around, Drew talks about Blockbuster Video and how long it had been around. There are certain things related to Bitcoin. Again, he talked about CEOs and the differences in structure, but I want people to catch on to Bitcoin is very unique, and it's going to be harder to grasp or wrap your mind around, but give credit to that 13 years. And don't dismiss it as, that's not that long. Think about how the internet has changed us. How long ago did the internet come around? And I think when Drew told me he wanted to really touch on technology and why this is important and highlight Bitcoin as a new technology, but also commodity, I want to support him in that and saying, like, there are nuances to this that you've got to keep always in mind too. So sorry to
that's okay. And so, yeah, Bitcoin is very unique because it's still, like I said in the previous podcast, it's still in its infancy stage where it's just kind of coming about. People are just learning about it. It's scary because it's volatile, right? The price goes up and down. But if you look at the trends, you, like I said before, you just have to zoom out and ask yourself the question: if I would have bought this 5 years ago when it was $200 a Bitcoin, would I have more money today or less? The answer is more. Right now, it's sitting at $17,000 roughly. And say if I would have bought this, 10 years ago when it was a nickel, would I have more money or less? The answer is more. So, you can safely assume, and again, this isn't financial advice, just from what we've seen and experienced, as far as trends, this is just for education and entertainment, but understand that the trend is going up with Bitcoin. And so you can assume that, all right, well, if I would have bought it 5 years ago, I would have more money today. If I would have bought it 10 years ago, I would have more money today. So you can assume if that trend continues 5 years from now, if you're willing to invest.
Oh, shit. Wait, I lost you for a second. I'm sorry. I pressed the wrong thing. So if you could repeat back what you just said.
Yeah, no, it's all right. So basically I was saying if you bought it 5 years ago at $200, you would have more money today. If you bought it 10 years ago at a nickel, you would have more money today. So you can assume that if that trend continues 5 years from now, if you invest, why today it's at 17,000, 5 years from now, who knows what the price may be? It could be 100,000, could be more, but 5 years from now, you can assume that it will likely be higher because it's going through mass adoption. 10 years from now, it will likely be higher because it'll continue to go through mass adoption. 8 billion people on the planet, have an opportunity to possess a scarce asset. And that's never been the case. Everyone can't own real estate, but anybody with a mobile device can own Bitcoin. And so that's a pretty big deal to be able to be in a position where, you can piece of a scarce asset. And so Bitcoin it will continue to evolve. It needs to go through regulations. It's a new technology, and that's why so many people, are fearful of it, because anytime there's a breakthrough in technology, people tend to be apprehensive. And we saw, like you mentioned, Blockbuster Video. There were 9,000 Blockbuster Video stores, and that was like the thing to do on Friday night, right? Go to Blockbuster, you get your movie, you get a pizza, and you look forward to that. But Blockbuster didn't see what was coming around the corner, and they failed to pivot with technology, and they went out of business. They didn't take video streaming serious, and the company went under. And so, you look at the things, the iPhone has disrupted so many different businesses. Remember Kodak camera? Nobody buys Kodak, products anymore, where you got to, buy a camera and then, take it to Walgreens to get the film developed. The iPhone disrupted that completely. Apple Music. Before, you used to have to go to the store and buy your cassette tapes and your CDs, and now you can stream your music, anywhere. And so all those changes, have come about recently and continue to change. And so gold used to be the best store of value for 5,000 years, but now there's a new technology called Bitcoin that's getting ready to, at minimum, replace gold. And that's why I kind of went through like the analogy of like an analog map, a physical map such as Rand McNally, versus a digital map, like Google. You can safely say a digital map is 10 times better because of all the perks a digital map can provide for you. It talks to you, tells you where to go, and so on and so forth. You can zoom in and out of it. It gives you a lot more coverage. A paper map is only going to cover such a specific radius, where a digital map will give you a greater distance of coverage. And so you can safely say a digital map is 10 times better than an analog map. And so if Bitcoin is considered digital gold, you can safely say Bitcoin is likely 10 times better than physical gold. And the reason I say that is because Bitcoin has all the properties of gold and none of the defects of gold. A defect of gold is its portability, right? It's hard to move. If you have a lot of it, it's expensive to move. If you have a lot of it, somebody may try to rob you and deprive you of it and take it. And so there's a lot of flaws that physical gold have that digital gold, you don't have to worry about those things. And so if you could have a store of value such as gold, but make it digital, it's a lot more beneficial. And the biggest thing is its portability. To be able to move your property from point A to point B with the click of a button or at the speed of light is unheard of, right? Where you can take your whole life savings or wealth and move it from one place to another. The unique thing about Bitcoin too is it's a technology that you can upgrade. And why is that important? It's important because of the same reason a acre in the Florida Everglades is not as valuable as an acre in New York City, right? Why is an acre in New York City more valuable than an acre in the Florida Everglades? Because New York City is built on granite and you can upgrade an acre in New York City. You can build on top of it, right?
Now, and who knew any of that about granite?
What's that?
I said, now who knew any of that about New York being built on granite? The Everglades are not.
Well, it's a solid. Remember that building? I think it was last year. Was it last year or the year before, that apartment building that collapsed in Florida?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all those people died. And so, just the foundation that building was built on wasn't strong, right? Had that building been built in New York City, they probably, wouldn't have had that accident happen. And so when you build a property or a building or a structure, you want to build it on a solid foundation. You don't want to build it on something that is going to collapse. And so New York City has all those skyscrapers. You can upgrade the land in New York City, whereas a place in the Florida Everglades would be hard to build on. You can't upgrade it. And so that's why Bitcoin is so, that's another perk about Bitcoin is you can upgrade it. It's digital property that you can upgrade, meaning, so for example, let's say you had X amount of Bitcoin and you wanted to leave that monetary value in a smart contract where if you were to pass, that money automatically gets dispersed to your children, right? And so one of the things about Bitcoin is you can upgrade technology to make that a reality, right? People can build smart contracts where if A, B, or C happens, then A, B, or C gets executed. And so that's important because, when you have things you can upgrade continuously, it just becomes more valuable. And so when you can upgrade your property because it's built on better land, it's going to become more valuable. When you can upgrade a digital asset continuously, it's going to become more valuable. And so if you have gold at a $10 trillion market cap, you can safely assume that Bitcoin could likely 10x from here. Bitcoin can likely take over the gold market cap over a period of time. This is such a heavy topic to me. I know we started a little late, but it's 7 minutes till 8 o'clock. I derailed Drew a few times, I think, but I honestly feel like he touched on most of what he was trying to hammer home. Mm-hmm. So I just want to give you this little guidance, we're going to have to go into wrap-up mode, which honestly, I think he did. He touched on the things that distinguish Bitcoin, why it's better. But
in these last few minutes, can you give us like the main things that you really hope today's podcast was gonna give people the incentive to do? And again, just like last time, some next steps for when we build on next week, because we knew we weren't going to be able to do this all in one, even in this one, right, Drew?
Yep, exactly. So,
and so give us a little preview of what next week's gonna do.
Yep. And so the three questions you asked when we started, we said, what is money? We covered that. We said, what's the problem with the money and what's the solution?
No, that was last time. That wasn't what I asked you. That was review. We talked about today's.
Sorry, but I feel like one thing that we should really, just kind of comb over again. We said the solution was Bitcoin, but the second question was, what's the problem? The problem is inflation, right? And that's what Bitcoin really does. Is it's a solution to the inflation problem. And so
you got to watch the other podcast so you can get all that, because he can't do all that in 5 minutes. So.
Right. So
that's the problem. Go to the other podcast, and then he's gonna recap this one and tell you what to come back for next week.
Exactly. So inflation.
Because Drew will do it. I know. That's why I had to jump in and say it. I'd be like, "We're not gonna finish."
Yeah, I know. I get on a roll sometimes, but So the biggest problem is inflation, right? And so.
And watch the other podcast for that. So what we talked about today was.
What we talked about today is just how technology changes over time, and Bitcoin is just the newest form of technology.
And I think I said I was going to ask you this, and I didn't. But why was that something you really wanted to hone in on? That the technology aspect was so important of it.
Because technology is scary, and we don't think about when we first learned about a new technology and how we responded. So, for example, the credit card.
Well, before you get into your example,
yeah,
push past your fears. Like he said it several times throughout this.
Right.
Push past your fears. And actually, Drew, you don't even need to give an example. You already told them that. Like I just wanted them to hear again, like he keeps saying technology. He keeps talking about the evolution of technology. He gives us random facts about technology, and they're really cool. But the key takeaway for today, from at least what I got excited about when he told me the format, was I wanted to hear why Bitcoin was better than everything else. And he literally has been talking about that for the last 5-10 minutes. But to me, I think that's the meat of what you're saying today.
Absolutely. And when it comes to technology, you always have to lean into it. You can't lean away from it. We saw what happened when people leaned away from it. They got blockbustered, right? And many industries went through that, retail and everything else. They leaned away from some of the changes, and they went out of business. And so whenever a new technology emerges, you have to lean into it and be willing to learn and be willing to embrace it. Otherwise, you can get left behind or wiped out. And so right now we're getting wiped out with inflation, right? Inflation is killing everybody. And so what's the lifeline, the safety net for that? You can do your own homework, but so far it looks like Bitcoin is the safety net, and it's an asset that's gone up by, more than 150% every year for the last decade. If there's a better investment out there, please let me know if there's a better opportunity. And even with all its volatility, it's gone up.
Now, people are going to debate you on that. Yes. So y'all put that in the comments.
Yeah, they can debate all day long. Just look at the timeline. It's an asset that's going up in value. Yes. Is it volatile? Absolutely. But that volatility will fade out over time, I believe, but again, it's not financial advice. It's just, it's an opportunity for people to look into and explore for themselves and make their own decision, right? If this is something that is worthwhile, that'll be for the viewers to decide for themselves. But we just want to put the information out there and, just kind of be a guide through this chaotic time that we're going through.
Awesome. Can you? Oh, can't see me. Trying to jump back in here. All right. So, what are we? Say what we're talking about next week. Distracted. I'm sorry.
No, so I mean, I think next week we should, just kind of further dig into one of the things that I think is really interesting is uh, inflation and how that is impacting a lot of bigger decisions. And one thing that I think we can start off with is uh, um, how the Federal Reserve and the IRS were both created in the same year. And just to take away real quick, what does the Federal Reserve do? It gives us money through stimulus, right? What does the IRS do? It takes it back through inflation or taxes. So we'll just close off with that and we'll pick up from there.
Awesome. That sounds so good. Thank you again so much, Drew. I really appreciate you. I'm looking forward to next week. And guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and we love all your comments. So have a good night, y'all. Thanks again,
Thanks,
Drew.
appreciate it. All right, see ya.
Bye.